I have needs. I have a lot of needs, and I just want to know, like, how do we solve this problem? I have needs and I need to solve the problem. How do we solve the problem? Is it either going to be like Democrats or Republicans? Who will solve it?
You want to start there?
Okay.
You want to start there?
Yeah.
I was thinking this morning, it seems like the one question is, what do you want to conserve? So you say, well, conservatives focus on conserving values, things they believe in. Liberals are progressives. They say what's new now is required. So why would I choose between those two? So if you ask me, am I a liberal or conservative, I no longer have an answer, because this country was built on a liberal tradition. So Lincoln and Rose, all that period. Now liberal has become a accusation, and conservative an accusation. So the whole conversation means nothing. And so we're participants in a narrative that has no meaning other than sales. And so the question, do I vote? Make up your mind, but don't take the conversation as if it counts. It means nothing, because on November 15th, everybody forgot what we talked about. So I also was thinking why Walters meant so much to me. And I feel that modernism has amnesia. So we have no memory. And I've been reading about how this country got started. The Puritans, King James and King Charles, upset a lot of people in England. And they upset it because they went to the Church of England and kept drawing back to Catholicism, which they spent a lot of energy getting away from. And the Puritans were really all advocates of the experience of religion. They didn't want to get into the argument. And so they really fought and died to start this country. So it's interesting to me that we began with religion as a organizing principle of what this country was. Quote, religious freedom. It wasn't that free, but at least religion. And then economics came along 100 years later. So Adam Smith was 1776 is when he wrote The Wealth of Nations. And so there's been this union of religion and capitalism that I think Walter is trying to unpack.
That's right. That's right.
And so you've given me a historical narrative that now organizes all my thinking. And I no longer feel I have amnesia. That I have
terrific,
a memory.
Isn't it?
Huh?
It's terrific.
And it is terrific.
So the question is always whether the economy can be situated in the religious tradition of covenant. And I suppose that, how do you say her name? Ayn Rand? Ayn Rand.
I called her Anne Rand, and she
Ayn
never
Rand.
objected.
Okay. Is
Never met her.
she's the one that wants to excavate the economy and remove it from any religious communitarian context, and what's gotten Paul Rand in such a bind is that he's made all of these commitments to her, but it won't work. It won't work politically because the political culture of our country insists that you've got to have some religious communitarian dimension to it that she wants to scuttle. So he's a walking example of the contradiction of how we are to think about the economy inside of a communitarian religion, I think.
So the word communitarian, this is another thing that you're reviving, that I'm giving my life to in a way. Yeah. And it, to me, it's an answer to the individualism of Ayn Rand, yeah. The individualism of our culture. So underneath all of that, so if you say, how do your needs get met? So what are people talking about? Talking about raising children, talking about safety. It's amazing how small the number of concerns people have. And it's that, and it's the environment, and it's my health, our health. And it's the vulnerable. What do we do with the disabled, people mentally returning people who've been in prison? What do we do with them? It's food. We've gone, all right, these are and it's the economy. How do we make a living now? Because Toyota's not coming to town. Okay, the last 30 years we've been waiting for Toyota to come to town, and we compete with them. And we want Walmart to come to town, and we want all these places. They're not coming. They're overbooked. And when they came, they never brought us much. They promised jobs and extracted everything we had and then left. So if you say, these are my needs, economics, raise a child, the individualistic tradition can't solve those problems. It just can't. I can't purchase an answer. So this culture, which I think capitalism in the 30s, productivity got so good that we could make all the shoes that people in America needed in 14 weeks.
Is that right?
So what are we going to do with the rest of the 38? We had a problem. And so if you start reading in the 20s and 30s where marketing, the manufacture of needs arose, and they convinced me that one pair of shoes wasn't enough. I was in India about 8 years ago and asked Shailendra, I said, do you ever go shopping? And he says, not very often. He says, I am looking for a pair of shoes. I said, really? He says, yeah, mine are wearing out. I said, how long have you been looking for a pair? He says, about 4 or 5 months. One of these days. Well, we have shoe closets. So how many feet? We're not going to grow more feet. And so that era, 100 years of manufacture, whatever I need, I can buy. So you talk about the predatory economy.
You can reverse that proposition, whatever I can buy, I need.
Amen.
Works both ways.
I love that, yeah. They said, because it's for sale, you must need it.
That's right.
What do you need? I don't know. I haven't been to the store lately.
That's right. That's very good.
And we just bought a TV, and I'm in it. I like to shop. I'm a guy that likes to shop. Okay, when the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. And the TV doesn't work. So I've spent 6 hours in the last 4 days getting my time-saving technology to be productive for me. So nobody measures the cost of this consumption. So the consumer equation is breaking down. So if you think a better economy, all this narrative. So what Walter does, he says there are narratives available to us in the Old Testament that we haven't seen. So what you do for me is you lift out of the Old Testament narratives that are much more relative and relevant to what we need now. My lens is community. So what do we do together? We've lost the common good. And so Walter talks about the uncredentialed leadership. You give me a God that's in process. We were in a gathering with John and with Damon, a Baptist minister, and I said, what about Cain and Abel, John says. And Walter's answer is, God's still in recovery about that mistake. So you give me an accessible God. You tell me you're not expecting enough of God. That God, we are in the process of creating God. So what that tells me is that what we traditionally extracted from the Old Testament was certainty, was knowing. People talk about I want to share with you my truth. And I always hiccup when I hear that. No, this isn't your truth. This is your construction. You made it up. You made it up. And so that to me is it. Huh?
Too bad it's profitable.
Well, it is profitable, but the question of what's profitable isn't profitable.
Consumer growth.
Well, see, all those measures aren't working now.
What?
All those measures aren't. So I'm not interested in the unemployment rate. I'm interested in whether my neighbor's going to find work.
Socialist.
I'm not interested. Yes. So what we've done is anything that cares about the common good, we've branded as incompetent. Socialist, communist, collective,
So
cooperative.
you privatize because other people can always do it better than the government. But we don't examine what privatism does in terms of the upward flow to the top of the pyramid with all the neighborhoods left behind.
Exactly. So the privatization, if you had a headline, if we were going to teach a course together, the first class would be privatization.
That's right.
And it began in, I don't know, 17th century with enclosure. So there used to be common lands owned by the king, and I could hunt on them. So I could support myself on the land that was common. So the common good, even though there was a little argument about the divine right of kings, and then all of a sudden the king needed money because they got in some wars that didn't go well, made some alliances that didn't work, some strategic errors. In this to modern days, we'd say lack of planning, which is, I love that. No matter what the problem is, what do we need to do better? Lack of planning. Nobody ever says relatedness is an answer. I saw a study once about $21 million spent in East Palo Alto, and not much came of it. And the reason was people fought over the money the whole time. And so the end of the story was, what we need next time is better planning. And I thought, no, you spent $18 million developing a plan. Why didn't you use that money to get people connected? And so in enclosure, the common good was lost, and it was privatizing what was public. And so I began to think that I'm on my own. So Robin Hood, from the rich to the poor, 17th century Occupy movement. Okay, he was after the 1%, and grew out of that. And so the privatization is just it occurs inside me now. So if I have a problem, if I got a wacko sister, which I do, she's nuts, I'm embarrassed by that. I'm ashamed of Millicent. And I've sent her to get fixed. And I did. I spent a lot of money to force her into an institution. And she's got diagnosed. She got into a behavior modification program, which I think conservatism finds attractive. We're doing that with schools now. And then she graduated. And for 6 months, she was cool. And then she said, I liked madness better. I said, you taking your lithium? She says, no, I'm not. And I said, why not? And she says, I don't like the way I feel when and so I thought, interesting. So all of that is my privatization of my sister's woundedness.
Curing versus caring.
Mm-hmm. Curing versus caring. So that's a whole big conversation. So it's not just private to the rich, which it does. And it's amazing that the middle class is disappearing partly of their own doing because they've stopped realizing what their interests are.
That's right.
They would rather have certainty. And they admire wealth as a great. In Ireland, with the house on the hill, the castle, the guy says, my son, and it starts with the U.S., my son, that castle, someday that'll be yours. And in Ireland, the story is, my son, someday we're going to get that son of a bitch. And so, in this culture, we want the wealth, and so that's our collusion with them.
That's right. I think it's correct that Karl Marx wrote his first newspaper piece against the laws of enclosure.
Wow.
That's where his whole thinking about the economy started, I think. He was just enraged at the laws of enclosure.
And now we're doing it now. The city of Cincinnati wants to sell the waterworks for short-term funding and long-term price increases. The whole deregulation movement is the privatization of interest.
That's right. And get rid of the women's residence downtown for the sake of the insurance company.
The Anna Louise is a place where women come and get healed, and it's a gorgeous property right in the center of where value is. And so the insurance company is questioning their right to exist. Western and Southern is the name of the insurance company in Cincinnati. Because it needs to be named.
That's right.
It's not an insurance company.
That's right.
It's this insurance
Yeah.
company, because our timidity.
I went to a rally at Lytle, is that how you said, Lytle
Lytle
Park?
Park.
About that, and they started the rally by reading the narrative of Naboth's vineyard, in which the king wants to usurp the property of the little person.
Exactly. That's what we've done.
Yeah.
So if you sell the waterworks, if you privatize corrections, now we know that when the private sector runs prisons, all measures of prison well-being get worse. This is true. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay, we privatize highways now. Very profitable.
Yeah.
Okay, the biggest landowner in every state is the interstate state highway system, and so that's exactly.
Yep.
We take from the common good. So what I get from your work is a blueprint of what a restorative community would look like,
That's right.
instead of a retributive community. So the world I'm living in now believes in retribution.
That's right.
And retribution is extracting from citizens what's rightfully theirs. And there's amazing things going on around that.
My experience in the church with this crisis is that it's just astonishing that in the Christian tradition, the gospel narrative of communitarianism has been so accommodated to what we're talking about that if you try to talk about what it really means, people are shocked and scandalized because it's been so monkeyed with that it's not even recognizable in very much of the church. It's astonishing.